So I'm here today with more questions than answers. I'm at that period in my life where I'm trying to figure out, what the way is in my life and who I am and where I'm going, and is there a difference between a person and an artist? A lot of people say to me, I really love to meet the real you outside of the art, the real you outside of the creation. And it's very difficult for me to see a difference between the two. And there's a way that I started to kind of ask myself, who am I? And it started on the back of my bedroom door. So this is the back of my bedroom door, and I have multiples of the question, who are you, who are you, who are you? So every time I leave my bedroom, every time I leave my house, every time I wake up, I see this question. And it makes me think about, who am I? Am I being me? Who do I wish to be? And, we'll scoot over here, and you'll see a picture of me kind of behind the mask of my art. And the two have started to blur together. And when I talk at conferences, I usually like to start with a picture that kind of goes back to the beginning of who I am, before the art, before the creation. And you'll see this is a picture of me and my brothers and sisters, and you can guess which one is me. No, yeah, it's... So yeah, that's me in I'm proud to say, my Michael Jackson shorts there. And I'm not adopted. I wasn't found on the street. I just happened to have a different dad to my brothers and sisters, which meant that I started out in life with a bigger afro than the rest of my family. And at the time, of course, it was a little difficult, and I would see that I was different to everyone else. But, now that I have the kind of privilege of reflection, I see that this gave me my passport or my advantage in life. Unlike my brothers and sisters, they were all made to fit in. They kind of had that peer pressure to fit in with everyone else. And when you look different, as soon as you step outside of your family home, people treat you differently. And I grew up in a place called Thamesmead, which is in southeast London. And some of you, may have seen that a little bit because it's filmed in Clockwork Orange a little bit, and more recently so a TV show called Misfits. But the thing about Thamesmead is it's in southeast London, and it's one of these, it was meant to be a utopia state with, people with money and without money and all different backgrounds living together. But actually what happened is it happened to be a thing called a sink estate. So, people who had problem families in different kind of estates around the country in London, they all ended up here. So you can imagine what kind of place that ended up being. But for me, it was a big playground. We could climb up these flats, and, everything was off the ground. Nothing was on ground level because we were close to the Thames, the River Thames. So they built everything a level up. So it was a big playground for me growing up. And, I got very good at climbing and jumping off of things. So that was fun. But growing up here also, strengthened me being an individual. It also, it was very white, very working class. And like I say, if you're slightly tanned with an afro, you have those different challenges to the rest of your family when you leave your house. And I kind of expressed myself, or I found the way that I could express myself was through drawing, was through art, was through creating my own kind of worlds and realities. And, I would draw faces and as a kid and, give them names and superpowers. And these would be my friends and my escape from where I grew up. And that eventually led me to a place called Central St. Martin's. There's a big story in between, but that would take too long. But I ended up at a place called Central St. Martin's in London. And this really opened up my eyes. There was a lot of people from different backgrounds, different incomes, and we all really learned to work together and collaborate. At the time, when I was 19, 20, 21, my work was still a little bit dark and still trying to get rid of kind of all those things about growing up. And my work at the time was a little unhappy. This was a character of mine called Hangman. And it had a little heart, and sometimes Hangman would have a briefcase. And the idea is, Hangman was a businessman that cut himself loose from a noose and was kind of traveling the world and being unhappy. And I think that was a little bit of me at the time. And when I graduated St. Martin's in 2003, I got on a nice little plane, and I headed to Japan. And I was interested in Japan and Japanese culture because at St. Martin's there was a lot of Japanese students, and I became that kid that hung out with all the Japanese kids and had sushi 5 times a week and saw all the Japanese movies and collected toys. So I really had a connection with Japan, and in 2003 I moved there. And I kind of found that some of the work that I was doing in the UK at the time wouldn't have been fit in because, a lot of it was graffiti and on walls and tagging, and I would have got in big trouble if I did that in Japan. So what happened is that I started to draw a lot smaller using very, very fine pens, like a 0.05 pen, which meant that the pen was so fine that I would have to be this close when I was drawing to kind of see the paper. And some of the drawing that I did there, it became a lot finer and a lot delicate. And there's still this kind of mixture of cute and monsters. And one thing about living in Japan, it made me okay with things being cute. So when you live in London, it's, growing up in London, there's something kind of anti-cute about it. But when you go to Japan, everything is cute. And that kind of had an effect on me and my drawing. And even though it was still a little kind of unhappy or dark in a way, it kind of adapted this cute factor. And here's some drawing. And you got these kind of different characters with carrying little handbags and holes in their heads and flowers in their pockets and bears in your pocket. And so that was really nice. And I found that I could just kind of escape into the drawing like I did as a kid. And I started to do some live visuals in clubs in Japan, well, it started in more kind of avant-garde places. So I would, take my sketchbook and draw under a camcorder, and then that feed would be projected on the screen. And then I would kind of do live drawn visuals, sometimes using my hand and magnifying glasses and moving it around. And here you go. Here's a picture of my hands and the pen at the time. Sometimes I would use Post-it notes that were fun, and you could interact with people and dancers. And I'm going to show a very quick video of what that looked like. And the fun thing about this and kind of accidentally ending up in this world in Japan of doing visuals in the avant-garde scene is that I really discovered that there's a whole genre of music that I had no interest in or kind of didn't really like, but it really helped the drawing because you kind of need to switch off in a way. And we're going to run a video clip to show you an example of some of that first music I would draw to. Okay, so I'm going to talk to the sky. Let's run video 1. Cut it. So this is kind of the type of music I ended up drawing to. And that happened because people, a friend at the time saw some of this type of drawing that I was doing and said, hey, can you do some visuals at my event or my party? And I said, yes, but the drawing I'm doing is so small and intimate. Let's draw under a camcorder. And that's how that all came to be. And then over time, I went from kind of more of the analog to digital, so using computers and drawing tablets, and drawing kind of more to DJs and dancers and musicians. And sometimes I would experiment, and I guess this is around 2004 or 5, but I would experiment with using multiple computers and tablets, and here you can see I tried to use my left hand and my right hand, and that wasn't a very good idea because that's what the left hand looked like. And, and even drawing to musicians. And we're going to run a second video clip, which is an example of the later kind of digital stuff that I was doing. Okay, video 2. And you can see here also that there's 2 screens. There's a screen at the front and a screen at the back. So I was also experimenting, again, with drawing with my left hand and my right hand. And the screen hidden in the back doesn't move that fast either, because that's my left hand. And the great thing about this is kind of transitioning from you know, the more analog stuff into the light stuff is that I realized that I was also a dancer. So you have these guys dancing here in front, but I'll also be behind, kind of drawing just as fast as they would be dancing and moving it around and drawing more layers. And it just really, really builds up, which is fun. Let's turn the volume up a little bit. Okay, let's cut that. So I found myself in the place where it's really exciting. You know, I'm kind of drawing here and zooming out, moving around, and you can move the canvas around. And if the crowd went woo, you know, you can write woo and zoom in, zoom out. And what I discovered at this time is that, hey, I'm a performer. There's something really special about working spontaneously and working in real time. And the funny thing would be in Japan, you know, fans would come up to me at the end of shows and be like, hey, can you sign me? And then that turned into a whole collaboration of drawing on my fans and kind of drawing all over their face. Sometimes with permanent pen, sometimes not. And it got to about, I think I lived in Japan from 2003 until 2008. And towards the end of 2008, I started to feel like I needed to go somewhere else, like my life was making a change. I knew that I wouldn't live in Japan forever. I didn't know if it would be 1 year, 10 years, 50 years. But one day I woke up and I said, okay, I want to change, I want to move. And I made the mistake, or maybe not mistake, of going to New York for a holiday. And anyone that goes to New York for the holiday for a first time, you get there, you love it. Oh my God, this place is amazing. I'm going to move here. So I went to New York for a holiday, loved it, got an artist visa. A few months later, I moved there in 2008. Probably not the best time to move to New York either. And then when I got there, I was like, oh, crap. You know, yes, New York has everything, but not if you move from Tokyo. You know, in Tokyo or in Japan, there's a kind of a huge sense of technology and collaboration and kind of a cultural experience or expectation for visuals. So what happened is moving to New York, I ended up kind of not doing the digital stuff as much, but picking up pens and drawing on objects and on walls, but still in a very much the spontaneous live way. So when I draw, there's usually an audience, and the audience usually drives me to kind of create these bigger installations or drawings. And that's a lot of what I've been doing now as well. And the great thing about this is, you know, I pick up the pen and I'll just draw. And we're going to run a third video, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the process of the drawing. Okay, so let's run video 3. So when I'm drawing, there's initially this white big piece of paper, which at first was very intimidating for me. And now I've discovered that there's so much freedom and potential in a white canvas, or any canvas. So I usually start with a big fluid movement and just drawing and just trying to fill up the paper as much as possible. So kind of creating the foundations of the future. And I don't really know where the pen's going. The pen knows where it's going, and I just follow. So I've got very good at listening to the pen and following. And here you'll see me follow, follow. If there's a bump in the wall, maybe that'll take me to another place. If the pen goes blank, then we do some dashes. And then I'll step back and look to see if there's any kind of smoother lines in the drawing. And if there's a smoother line, I draw a nose, and then a mouth and eyes, because that looks like a face. And I'll go through and draw all these faces. And it's funny, at a conference one day, someone asked me, why do all your eyes look left? And I said, oh, they don't all look left. And then I stood back and looked at some past drawings, and I said, oh, they all look left. So I'm still trying to figure out some of what these ideas or symbols or language means when I draw them. You know, if there's an angle that's more like a triangle, I draw a bird's beak, and if there's a bird's beak, you need an eye. And for me, words and drawing are the same thing. It's very spontaneous, it's all lines. And you'll see that within the work. And then I always, when I'm drawing, I'm so close to the paper, so that when I step back, it's always a surprise to me that it works, because I never really know what I'm drawing until it's finished. And sometimes people ask me, how do I plan out my composition? And I say, I don't, it just happens. And every time I do, it's a surprise. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's go back. And so there's something really nice about the expectations, or the kind of the not knowing where you're going. And someone pointed out, or actually a few people have pointed out to me, that my drawings look like maps. And I've started to think of myself like that. And I myself am a tool, and I'm mapping out where I'm going through my drawing. Sometimes when I step back from my drawings, they look so big and confident, like they already existed, or they always existed. And I'm just finding a way of pulling them into a place where we can see them. And it's very interesting to me to look back at some of the characters now and some of the words within my work and start to try and figure out what they mean to me. Something I draw a lot is kind of an eye like this, an eye with lots of raffles. And there you go, there's one there. So I started to go back and pull out the meaning, or kind of behind the language of what some of these mean. And for example, the eye. I had a look and decided, what does that mean? And for me, eye has always existed in the world, but she was not always open, let alone aware and responsive. A singular string of events led eye to the practice of meditation, which helped her become much more accepting of the new experiences and more responsive towards the world at large. Now, well, this new openness is visually manifest in the smooth, regularly shaped flower eyelashes that now frame eye. And I also look back at some of those past drawings that I did, or those past characters. And the one that I showed you at the beginning, Headless. This is what Headless means to me. Headless used to get lots of headaches and was extremely troubled, let's go back, by the past. In an attempt to escape all this, he cut off his head, but quickly realized that the shadow of his past was still firmly attached. Headless is now on a journey to find peace with his shadow. And I feel like that was me at the beginning of my journey. That was me trying to figure out who I was and who I am. And now I've become more like the eye. I've become more interested in accepting the idea that my art and me are the same. And as the beginning I showed you the way, or who are you, now I just celebrate yay, kind of you are you. And I'm enjoying it, and it's a great journey. So everyone, please enjoy the yay and celebrate that you are you. Cool, thank you very much.